Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny. I'm here with Matthew John, and today we're going to talk about Conan the Hyborian Age, the new role-playing game coming out based on the super popular, at least super popular to me, the Conan books based on Robert E. Howard's work. Matt, how are you doing?
Oh man, I'm always good. And when anyone asks me to come on and talk about the incredibly cool and privileged work that I get to do on taking things that a amazing writer did, almost 100 years ago, and put them into some other format, regardless of the task, I just got to pinch myself. So, yeah, man, Robert E. Howard was a writer who he wrote like a blacksmith Hughes, and I'm super psyched to be here. So let's talk about my latest, because I can't believe I'm still doing this thing.
Yes, the last time we talked, we were talking about one of the Conan books from Modiphius that you wrote in, and now we're
Conan Exiles, right? Was it Conan Exiles we talked about?
I believe so. Yes.
Or was it? Yeah, it must have been. Yes.
Yeah, I'll put one of those notification things in the video so people could check out that interview as well. So this is interesting. But what excites me is that not only are you involved, but you have Jason Durrell involved with you. You have Chris Shepperson involved with you. People that worked on it with you in Modiphius.
Mm-hmm.
So you still got those same creatives that love Conan to work with you on this. And you're currently the rules development head of that. You're also the writer. You're spearheading this. So if I may ask, how did this land on your lap?
Oh man, everything you just said actually brought it back to me to being like, oh my god, that is so cool. What is happening right now? Okay, let me try to answer this in order. So when Monolith and Modiphius first sort of came onto the scene, Monolith first and then Modiphius, I feel like it was like 6 months later they did the Conan RPG. And so this was during the time where crowdfunding was really taking off, projects were successful, and we had a just ridiculously successul Conan board game RPG, which I was not part of at the time, for the record. So anything I say in compliment to the Conan board game, I can't really, I didn't write it. I just wrote the solo co-op rules. Anyways, I started with that, and then like 6 months later, I want to say, Modiphius, maybe even a year, launched their RPG campaign, and they were basically greenlighting a ton of books for this. And I was like, man, if you guys need help with that, I actually have the Conan board game prototype. I'm writing a scenario for Monolith, so hit me up, man. I'll help you out with the book. And then they offered me to do the book, and so I was like, whoa. And so I did. And then from there, I actually started working with Monolith. I worked on a few more Modiphius books. I worked with Monolith again. And I run Conan Gaming Group, which is a fairly popular, nice, friendly, awesome hub for things Robert E. Howard, Conan, especially Conan Gaming, Sword and Sorcery. And so I've been there doing that, but Monolith, I mean, eventually Fred Henry, the publisher, the co-owner of Monolith, basically said, he flew me to Paris and was like, hey, work for us, which was totally awesome in the sense that he's like, you really like this stuff and you already do this thing and you have a passion for it. And so he was like, come do this. And so since then I've been doing it, blah, 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 blah. We had successful projects. Conan the board game has been successful ever since. I got to write the solo co-op system. And now here we are where Fred wanted to do the Conan RPG when he knew the rights would be available. And so Monolith got it. And there were all kinds of ideas bandied around in terms of what do we do with this? And I have such a love for the board game. And I've had ideas in my head since I was like 10 years old for writing role-playing game systems. Anyways, very long story short, they let me sink my teeth into this. And after a lot of play testing with my original friend group, then going beyond that, and then going even beyond that to test at conventions, and then even beyond that to like Gen Con testing, we got to the point where I feel like we got a good thing. And so Chris Shepperson, Jason Durrell, we got Richard August back. Jason Brick is back. He wrote a lot for the Conan game at Modiphius. It was really important to me that we bring in the people who understand Conan in the gaming sphere. There is no reason to start fresh with that. I wanted to do a different rule system, one that I think really complemented and echoed, to a sense, what we were doing with our board game. And so I felt like we kind of had to create something new, and it had to be not super complex. So anyways, I designed the system. We'll get into that in a bit. But that's where it came from. And I mean, it seems like the early word is really strong. People are picking up what we're throwing down in terms of the rules light, easy to pick up and play system. And so hell yeah, man. I'm so jazzed.
I noticed when I talk to other creators, usually usually talk about, sometimes the story idea comes out first, and then the rules, and sometimes all the rules, then the story idea. But I think in your case, it seems like we all know the story of Conan. You have the team with you that has worked with Conan lore into role-playing games previously. So should I assume correctly that probably the first thing you thought of when this was handed to you was like, okay, let me work on the rules first for this?
Yeah, no, actually, that's totally it. So we started with, it wasn't even, hey, Matt, go do this thing. It was more like Matt being like, listen, I know we got the Conan thing, and I know we have some certain ideas internally of what we want to do with this. And I saw that as an opportunity to be like, well, I finished up writing mostly the things for Red Nails, and this is past Conan the Conqueror. These are all board game things for those who don't know. I mean, we've done many expansions and delivered them all, which is an important point here. And so I wanted to kind of say, look, I think I got a great idea for what we could do for an RPG for this game. I mean, I really, the only reason I'm talking about any of this is because I once started a Facebook group called Conan RPG Players. And then I eventually changed to Conan Gaming Group because there was more Conan games and I was into all of it. I said, basically, I have ideas for this and this is what I want to do. And so I did. They allowed me. It was good enough at the beginning. It passed muster. We went out, we tested. And so the lore came after, though. So I knew, like, I'm not a Conan lore specialist in the sense of like who Jeff Shanks or Mark Finn or just a lot of Jason Durrell who we got for the book. I know the stuff. I know when it's right and when it's wrong, but I'm not encyclopedic, and we have guys who are. And so I absolutely wanted to bring Jason aboard for that. And so we brought him on, and then the other guys were more like, I wanted to bring back a few people who wrote some really awesome Modiphius 2D20 sort of modules, scenarios, whatever, for Modiphius. And so we did. And also Chris also has worked with a lot of these guys, so he brought them back too, in terms of he knows who gets the work done well and quickly and efficiently. And like, there's a bunch of authors in the RPG sphere that we did not get, but to bring on this time, that I'm excited to bring on next time for what we're doing. Again, they hand Matt the keys to the kingdom, and then they're like, hey, help build your dream team. So I did the best. I'm sorry I'm going at length. You're asking these questions that I'm like, that is so awesome. And here's what happened. I'm just thrilled.
So let me ask you a bit about the rules a bit. I mean, I'm not going to ask anything very detailed. So we, of course, this was at one point under the Modiphius's 2D20 system, and even before that, Mongoose had it for the D20, and then before that, I think TSR had it for a bit.
Yeah, I think they were TSR at that time. It was they did a system that's actually pretty beloved, which I haven't played, which might be of interest to people watching this, because I've heard it's really good, and I even have a guy who lives close to me who's like, dude, you can have this. You just need to come over and get it. And perhaps it's that my focus on other things and my ADHD is to a point where it's like, dude, I can't make it. I can't get over there to get it. But I've heard like that it's really well loved. But also in the design process, I reached a point where I was like, I got to stop looking at stuff because I have ideas of my own and I'm bumping up against things that, that's what I was going to do for a sword and sorcery game. Like that was the exact wavelength that I was thinking. So that's the anxiety of influence. But yes, sorry. What is your next question, my man?
Oh, so the rules for the game. How would you basically describe it?
Okay, so I wanted this. I had some design principles in mind. One is that I wanted it to be familiar. That's not actually my first tenet. It's just the first thing I remembered to bring up in this podcast. But I wanted it to be. I did not try and reinvent the wheel. Okay, I've loved RPGs. I've loved board games for a long time, and I will unequivocally say that I did bring in some board game mechanic influence into this game. I find the board game mechanics are very satisfying. They're not as focused on being a simulator as they are just feeling good and being fun. And so I wanted to bring that element to the RPG, and what better time to do it than with a publisher who has the rights, who already has a highly successful, beloved board game for this character, but also in the RPG sphere, right? Like, I want our board game players to be RPG curious. And so I didn't want a ton of subset rules, right? And there are other elements to the core rules that I plan on adding on to that we didn't address head on. Like, you know, RPG world is huge. You got to consider sieges and mass battles and sea battles and whatever it is, right? I really wanted to focus on a simple set of rules that works the same in terms of whether you're a fighter or a sorcerer or a thief, in its fundamental sense. So, 4 stats: might, grit. Might, edge, grit, wits. Essentially, I take. I'm not going to. Might is your physical prowess. Okay. Edge is a mixture of your dexterity, situational awareness, sharpness, deftness, that sort of thing. Grit is your constitution, which also informs your stamina pool. I'll talk about that later, but I don't want to overwhelm. And then you have wits. And wits is a combination of raw intelligence, computing power, maybe some wisdom, but situational awareness is also on your edge. But it's also your sorcery, right? It's your ability to cast spells. And so I wanted a system that allowed you to do the sorcery element that works the same way as you would resolve doing thievery or fighting or any other number of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, almost like a skill.
Yeah, it is precisely a skill. That's how it works in the game, and that's eventually how we came down to it. And then it's about who can access it, how much, what does it do, and then you're writing the skills the same way you would write a, I don't know, if you want to take a charge attack, you can move an attack in the same round. Well, I've got a skill that costs the same, a spell that costs the same amount. And so when you go to do those things, your wits score is going to inform your ability to cast that spell, but it's also going to inform your like wisdom, your influence, your fear aura, basically. So I wanted, with just the 4 stats, I wanted you to be able to really kind of make whatever character you want, but really lean into the things that you want without having to lean out of others. And this is the last thing I'll say before I stop bloviating about this entire thing. To me, Conan had to be classless. Okay? Conan the Barbarian, the Destroyer. Sorry, that's not a good example. The Buccaneer, the Thief, the Pirate, the Conan of the Kozaki, and that sort of thing. Conan should not be about class, the game. And I don't mean everyone who plays it has to play a Conan character. to be like Conan, but you have to have the same sort of, you don't need to be tied down. And so I tried to limit the tying down of those and just make it buffet style. I was very much playing Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Elden Ring, and I love the idea of just getting a starting package. Okay, this is where you're coming from. That might mean you were born in the hills. That might mean you were born of demon's blood. That might mean you were born in the streets, or that you're royal, or whatever it is. So you have the starting package, but it doesn't mean you can't move in a different direction. Other than being a little particular about preventing characters from being Conan the sorcerer, which we did instill, because like you kind of have to decide at the beginning if you're gonna. Anyways, that's kind of it, dude. And it's just really like as far as a skill resolution, GM says, here's how difficult it is to do the thing: climb the wall, sneak past. Well, and sneaking past would be a contest, or to figure out, to whatever it is, to whatever your check is. Survive it's starving to death, whatever the GM says you have to take. That's a simple. You take your stat, and then you take a dice roll, which is a stat die, meaning it fluctuates slightly from D6, D8 to D10, which is a thing you can bolster if you want. The GM says you need a 12. Okay, take your stat, plus roll your stat die, add it to the result. Boom, that's your thing. So that's what I mean when I say familiar.
Oh, okay. So it's not like Modifius. Well, Modifius had the even though it was a 2d20 system, it has special dice, stress dice. I think
don't need those. Systems. There is one special die. There's one special die, but you don't need to buy a set from the public. Like it's all polyhedral dice set.
Oh, excellent! Yeah. That's great to hear.
Well, and just on that note too, and I swear to God, I'm not going to go at length. To do a check would be what I just described. To do an attack would be similar. You'd take the appropriate stat, right? Like might for a hand-to-hand attack, edge for a ranged, wits for a sorcery, and you are going against either a physical defense value, which is set in stone, right? Not the one the GM says, oh, it's here, but you're within a similar range as what the GM might ask for: easy, difficult, etc. Then you're just comparing it to that value. So I guess what I'm trying to drive home is that there is a way of resolving things in this game, and it doesn't necessarily change what it is you're doing. It just depends on what your specific advantage is. So it's player facing in the sense that the players are going to deal with most of the heft. Here are the skills that that you've actually chosen. So it's not like, oh God, what's all this stuff I get when I start with this? It doesn't work that way. It's like mostly you're choosing as you go. You get a little starting package and then you move past it. And in the same sense, this game is not overwhelming for the Dungeon Master. It is the easiest to run RPG I have ever played, and I designed it to be easy to play. Okay, I swear to God, I'm done talking about this. You have the next question, and you're going to have a time editing this of like, geez, I'm going to need to put some interrupters in here because he is blabbing. But I'm just feeling lucid about it. I've been thinking about it all day.
No, that's great. No, I'm glad you explained that way. I've just now been looking recently at the Quickstart guide, so I love your explanations of how this is working. Question about lore. Now, Conan, it's a lot of cool places you can start at. What's your beginning point so far?
So, in terms of, we wrote these rules, we put them out, we have the system, and then we have whatever adventure books we're releasing. Where are we kind of setting it thematically? This was actually sort of a late game decision in that I wanted people to be able to write whatever adventures that they felt fit well in the Hyborian Age, fit well with sword and sorcery, and felt fairly Conan. Now, not necessarily in the sense that like you have to be a barbarian character and have the values of Conan. I meant more so the beats of those adventures, the length of those adventures. So this game is set up where you can totally have campaigns. And as a GM, you can, there are no limitations in terms of how you can write it compared to any other RPG. But as far as how we wanted to present this, I was very adamant that we think about this as sword and sorcery, and we think about it as like the 18 to 20, depending who you, finished and unfinished Conan stories that exist from Robert E. Howard. I was like, think of it this way. If any given campaign reaches about that level of adventures, that's the ceiling for what I want to present. Not meaning what you can do as a GM, but like, I wanted this to be about the careers of the player characters. And so each session, if you play what we call tales, which are our modules, scenarios, however you want to frame it, we have tales, and your progression, your experience points are based on completing those tales. And if you do, each tale usually has things that can allow you to get one or two extra. And there's like sort of victory conditions, which I think brings it more to a board game feel. And GMs who create their own adventures are encouraged to use that framework, but they also don't have to. You just have to figure out how you want to give players experience if you want to do it differently. This is unabashedly a narrative game. So I really wanted it to be also, my second thing that I was really adamant about was that I wanted this to work for the 40 to 50 to maybe even 60-year-old gamer who is busy, tired, has run games for a long time. This is my flip side of the board game players who maybe never played an RPG. But for those who played it a lot, I want them, because I'm saying, look, here's a new system. I'm going to make it easy as shit for you to run. And also one that you can drop in and drop out of. You can have people who show up randomly. You can do one session online and one session at a table. Because the idea is each tale you run, we try to keep them very open-ended in our books so that you can run this one, then that one, then that one. Or you can take these 6 tales linked together that Jason Durrell wrote, and do them campaign style. But I wanted to make this where you're Conan in the sense that it's your story. The party of people doesn't necessarily matter. If you pop in or out and you're playing these sessions, it's about you doing heroic over the course of your life. And every time you play, that's the moment that you capture. So we wrote it so it could be time agnostic, like date in the Hyborian Age agnostic, but also players who have been at the table agnostic, in the sense that people can pop in and pop out. So time period, to answer your question very quickly, Manny, it's like Conan's King, and we don't get much more into it. Only really one of our tales in the book addresses Conan directly, in terms of he has some sort of real weight. I have always been of the mind with all of the Conan games that come out that playing as Conan would be cool, but I would kind of rather just be a different character in the Hyborian Age. And I think that's where role-playing games come alive for me.
No, and I agree. I prefer that than playing Conan himself. It's just, I don't know.
That's board game stuff for me. That's board game stuff. I can't be thinking like Conan, and like, if you bring narrative too far into it, I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm not worthy. I am not worthy.
So let's talk about the art style for this. Now, am I wrong in assuming, and I'll showcase some of the pages that are in this Quickstart, this 52-page Quickstart, which is free, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. But am I wrong in assuming that the creative, the design team behind the board games had a hand in this in some way?
Oh, yeah. Now, I mean, you're actually testing my knowledge of intercompany situation. I mean, I think that whoever did the graphic design for who informed the overall look of our text pages, right? I don't think they're the same person doing it now, but we absolutely have an internal look that we're trying to preserve. And we had to kind of come up with, we had to kind of integrate. We had to get a RPG look that goes well with the board game. But yeah, we tried to keep it very much in the same aesthetic. Because that's it. Like, we have a lot of devoted, dedicated fans who keep coming back over and over for board game expansions, and like are just completely enthusiastic and grateful for the material. Like, it is amazing. I love doing that work. And so we'd be fools to not try and say, hey, here's this, we can take the narrative bit of the board game and push it farther. And if you've already played RPGs, great, you're going to have no issues. If you haven't, then, this might be a good entry point. And it's going to look the same. You're going to use the miniatures. You're going to use the boards. Of note, I think every one of our boards, there might be 2, maybe a couple, not many. And we have a lot of board game boards at the company. But the tales, as I'm talking about, that are going to be printed in these books, which will most likely, it will be 2 books of pre-gens that you may or may not purchase. That's up to you. They utilize the maps in the board game. You don't need them at all. You'll see how sort of zones and space and combat can work. You have some options there in terms of using board game boards or otherwise. Like, we've kind of considered all options for that. And so you're going to get a lot of utility out of your board game stuff if you have it. But if not, you do not require it.
Excellent. So yeah, I mentioned that this Quickstart is free. Where are we right now with the crowdfunding project right now for this?
Okay, please go sign up. I'm sure there'll be a link below to just follow so that you get a notification when it goes live. That helps. I mean, that just helps. It helps hype. It helps us gauge things, etc., etc. But we launch on October 15th. Now, I guess things are always subject to change, but that's my ironclad date from the company, which we just announced like a day ago, 2 days ago. October 15th is when we launch. And I mean, obviously we want all comers. Even if you just look at the core book, even if you're a Modiphius diehard and you have bought 15, 20 different books, like, that game has such amazing lore. And we didn't try to come in and be like, hey, let's replace your game system. But we did try to make a book that is succinct, has beautiful art, succinct in terms of the lore. Like, it is a compact encyclopedia of the Hyborian Age in our core book, and I'm so proud of it. And I can say that because I didn't write it. Like, we hired Jason Durrell, who wrote the Conan Bible for heroic signatures, to do it. And yeah, like, there is just, please do check us out. So sign up for that link. And if you're like, ultimately, I don't need another Conan role-playing game, I like the one I'm playing, I'm not here to tell you that's wrong. It's just, please have a look at what we got, because we've made the buy-in small in terms of you could buy 1 book or up to 3 books, and that's it. That's it for a quick Kickstarter one, plus bells and whistles.
And now, what are the 3 books? So I'm clear.
I mean, I don't know. I might get in trouble for saying this, but you've got, I don't think. I think we clarified this in the last one, and whatever. Sorry, Monolith. Fire me now, guys. That's not an issue. So we've got the core book, and the core book will include all of the game rules, character creation, sorcery, lore, in a sort of goes through the places in the Hyborian Age and gives a sense of like what's really happening there, encyclopedic, but it doesn't extrapolate. Okay. Every other RPG system has has had the necessity of filling pages. Okay. There's like a standard of what we need to, the idea, the size of a book. And so I'm not saying anybody needs to do this or that, but I'm saying the trend has been to like, let's fatten this book. That was the trend for fat books. And we're kind of like, we don't necessarily need to do that, but I also don't want to extrapolate. I want GMs to do that. So what we've done is try to present the Hyborian Age in a sense that it all makes sense, it's clear, and it's not contradicting things. So these are the facts. It's kind of how we laid it out, but also creatively written. Like, Jason did a great job on making it sound amazing and enthralling. So that's a reason to jump in and check out this campaign, even if you're not a gamer. But if you are, and especially if you've played the board game, oh my God, please come see what we've done. I think you'll have a lot of fun.
I love the map at the end of this quick start. I mean, it's a two.
Oh yeah, that is that one was a new one commissioned by Heroic Signatures by Francesca Bellard, I think her name is. She just won Ennies, I think. She is amazing. Mm-hmm.
So usually I try not to ask what's happening ahead too much, because that's not really fair for creators for me to ask them that when they, we just put this book out, give them a chance to breathe so they can think of the next project.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the direction of the line. Like do you see when it comes to future books more like setting pieces, or maybe more like a adventure collections of adventures? What do you how do you envision the line?
That is a tough question, and one I have to sort of tiptoe over. That said, I will say that it's not written in stone, but that my push and like my clout in the situation matters, but not it does not. I have checks and balances, and so I feel like I want to make sure that people who have bought a ton of Conan stuff in the past, because really we're appealing to a core group of gamers who also like Conan. That's our audience, and so I don't want to make people rebuy stuff. So I want to make it as economical as possible. So whatever we do in the future, I would like it to have any sort of fundamental rules about things that you aren't necessarily going to get in a core book. I would like to put those with setting material, right? Like, buy this book, or it would offer new mechanics, new options, and also a deeper dive into not necessarily lore, because I don't like to extrapolate a whole lot. And we can let our tales writers do that, right? Like, in the tales, you can kind of extrapolate what's really happening in Shadowzar, right? How does that really look? And then we can keep it consistent across the line, but we don't know. And I don't want us to just say, this is how it's going to go. So I would say setting material or thematic material that will also, that will match any sort of new rules, mechanics we need. And there's one other angle. We have a board game, and we plan to continue the board game line. So one of the aims in the future is absolutely to take anything we do with the RPG or with the board game, however you want to look at it, and make it so that one benefits the other. If you're just here for the RPG, buy that stuff. If you're just here for the board game, buy that stuff. If you're here for both, buy this pledge.
I was about to ask you about that, because when you mentioned about the association between this line and the board games, if there'll be like a companion book for some of these board games coming out.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like, so when I'm answering about what we do next, there's so many things on the table. And I want to kind of package them all together, because I think they all work together and are really good. I want to, when we first launched the RPG, we kind of want to launch it on its own merits. I'm not saying there's no other offerings that tie into other stuff, but our focus is on launching the RPG system as a good thing that doesn't say, hey, board gamers, buy more stuff so you can play the thing. It's more like, here's this low entry point. If you're into it, check it out. And also RPG players come in and get on board. I don't know. We have to cater to a few different audiences with it in that regard. But the first shot, I want it to be, here's our new thing on its own merits. And then we'll go from there. But there's we would be foolish to not have in the future everything synchronous in terms of the Conan games that we make, right?
Wow, this is exciting. I can't wait for the Kickstarter.
I feel like I know Conan fandom fairly well in terms of the gaming sphere, and like I am trying to make it consumer fan friendly, right? Because I'm also aware of I started as buying this stuff, and I have my own sort of qualms and issues with board games and RPGs, and I'm like, guys, I am really adamant on making something that would please, and every time I'm like, ooh, someone wouldn't like that, it comes into the discussion. Anyways, I'm just I think I feel super happy and privileged to be able to do this work, and so I'm grateful.
Yeah, you must be excited. This is the first book of the line.
Yeah, and nervous as
but I have to say, I like what I'm hearing about the rules. I think for me, at least for me, for Conan, and this is not a diss to Modifius or the D20 system that Mongoose did or TSR, but I always felt that for something for me to work with Conan, it has to be very narrative, but at the same time, if combat happens, it's brutal and quick.
Yes, and empowering. It was an element until it's not, until there's something that really challenges you, and then you're like, I'm at this part in this tale, I can't necessarily recover right now, a bit low on things, all I have is the might of my thews to get me through this situation. And so I, as a person who plays Conan games, I really wanted something that would be light and kinetic with forward momentum and a little bit of what's the term, resource management, not that sounds so weak, but like how to spend your bursts of energy, and like where to prioritize things. And so I wanted something that felt like that, where your nose was out of the rule book. There's not a ton of subsystems, everything kind of just jives with one another, but it's just different elements or to the extremes: might, mind, nerve, will, stamina. That's what I wanted to invoke. And I don't want it to be I did not want you to have to constantly reference things. And so I tried really hard to streamline and make it feel kinetic and visceral.
So yes, excited about this. Viewers, I'll put links in the description for things we've talked about. Let me ask you one fun question before we wrap up. So, the Conan the Barbarian movie that Jason Momoa starred in. Now, it felt like they had the formula to create something really cool. I mean, Jason Momoa is a great Conan.
I agree.
He has the look.
I agree.
But the movie just wasn't very good. If I may ask your opinion.
100%.
Why do you think that movie didn't resonate so well with fans of the Conan mythology?
So I only laughed not because I'm like, that movie is so bad, how dare you bring. That's not what it is. That's me being like, it's just a question I've encountered in fandom a lot. Not interviewers asking me about it, but like it's just everyone, obviously the movies come up, right? And so I've talked about this on the Rogues in the House podcast, which is the thing that podcast that I have, and on our blog. I've written a thing for Grimdark magazine where I kind of unleashed on this movie. And so I think the issue is that like there are some cosmetic elements to this feeling like Robert E. Howard, or at least to the comics that felt like Robert E. Howard. There's some callbacks in that regard. The aesthetic's cool. Jason Momoa has this sort of simmering intensity. There's some shots and moments in that film where he feels very much like Conan, but it is such a derivative fantasy. Otherwise, it's like a fetch quest, Lord of the Rings, 9 rings to rule them all. Okay, I got to get this many shards of this thing. Conan's dad has one of them. He's hiding it. He's a blacksmith, and there's a quest, and this kid needs to find himself, and there's orcs in it. Like, I don't give a shit what anybody says. They put orcs in it. They're like, these guys, no, they're not orcs. It's totally just, nah, they're orcs because Lord of the Rings was hot when you were writing this. And like, anyways, it just, the plot and all that jazz is just not Conan. The first little bit of that movie, young Conan fighting the Picts, and there are some moments in there. It's just, it doesn't have that pulp vibe. It has this stupid fetch quest fantasy thing that just doesn't quite work. And there's orcs, and I resent it. I'm kidding.
Yeah, the first movie with Arnold, even though I didn't realize it 2 years later until I started reading the books how source material differs than what the movie projected, especially with his origins and things like that. But I always felt that the movie captured the spirit of it very well, and I think it's because they got the tone right. But I think Tulsa Doom, played by
James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones.
Yes. I think that's the thing with the Jason Momoa movies. Stephen Lang, although he's a good actor, very good actor.
Yeah, but
it just didn't work.
No, he was just chewing scenery with no purpose. It was just stupid.
Yeah, it was disappointing, and it's sad because you would think at this point now there are so many great stories to adapt from the Conan novels of old to make into a great movie, and I don't know, it was strange. But that's movie producers for you.
yeah, and I mean, just as of note, like the Conan 82, as you said, it has the sort of tone and the vibe. The world looks right. It has the sort of spirit. It has the intensity of Robert E. Howard. You know, there's some things in there that aren't Conan that separate that character from Conan. But like, I don't know, that feels like the Hyborian Age to me, and Basil's soundtrack and like the Ron Cobb production design. Like, I know people have issues with that, and I don't want it to mix with anyone's headcanon or firm canon of Robert E. Howard, but it can influence things the way that it does in Conan Exiles. It doesn't become new mythos, but elements and aesthetic from those films will appear, and I think that's super cool. One of the tales that I wrote for the role-playing game absolutely references a thing from even the dreaded, it doesn't reference the thing, but it like takes the vibe of a thing from one of the Conan, the Lancers that people would have read back in the day, and it adapts, but more so just the movie. But let me also clarify, it doesn't adapt the movie. It has a scene that will be familiar, and it actually plays more into Robert E. Howard stuff. It's not attempting to be canon. It's trying to show that vibe and to like invoke those sorts of things from the Conans we know and love, if that makes any sense. But it does not contradict Robert E. Howard stuff. We were very clear about that. It just, if anything, it just kind of like shines a spotlight on other elements is all.
Yes, I would say that right now we're living in a great time for Conan. Even though there's still rumors of a movie, who knows?
I know things, man, and it sounds Look, anything that I know, I don't actually. I mean, I have a little bit of insider knowledge, and I would just say that it's almost like with things that are currently potentially maybe happening, it's like someone crawled into my brain and pulled out the things that I would want for this and like made it happen. It's just silly, and I hope it all comes to fruition. It looks like it will.
Oh, that's awesome. I know it's hard to find out what's going on lately with Hollywood, but at least right now we have.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, but at least we have like new novels coming out. We have Jim Zub still writing Conan.
Yeah, they're killing it with the comics, man. It's so good.
I'm really glad that Monolith and other people that have the license aren't just like getting rid of the people that worked on it beforehand and trying to get new people to work on it. They not only just you guys able to work on the role-playing game, but Jim Zub, who did it for Marvel, now is doing it for Titan Comics, I believe. That's the
and I think you will find too going forward there'll be a little more synchronicity in terms of the people who are working on this side of things, the people who are working on that side of things. I'm not saying we're going to cross everything over or anything of that nature. I'm just saying that like we all talk and we try to we try to cross pollinate. Is that the right word? We try to like boost each other's signals, but also just where things make sense to have any sort of synchronicity, we will absolutely be working at that, and we are.
Excellent. Any last words before we wrap up?
I don't know. I'm sorry, guys, that like I really blabbed on about this, but to be frank, tonight I've already done a few sessions of this. I've written some things about it. I've done some interviews, and tonight is when I felt fairly loose to just give you my very candid and honest feels when it comes to this project. And so yeah, I hope you dig it. Please at least just check it out and maybe share it for those who might dig it. I wrote this game for you, and that's many yous. And some of yous might feel like, that wasn't for me. And that's okay. Just know that I did keep you in mind, and we all did. And like October 15th, please come check this project out. And if you want to hear more from me, if I have not blabbed enough tonight, please check me out at Rogues in the House podcast. You can check us out at Rogues in the House Presents for our blog, where I and others write interesting articles on such things. You can check us out at Rogues in the House on Instagram. And please go out and consider buying my Sword and Sorcery collection, To Walk on Worlds. Available via Amazon. It's good. People seem to like it. I'm getting a lot of nice feedback. So if you like this sort of material and you want to see what I would do with a Sword and Sorcery weird horror mixture of tales, check out To Walk on Worlds. And that's my whole deal, man.
I knew about the Rogues in the House, the podcast, blog, and their Instagram, which I believe I follow all three. I didn't realize you wrote those novels. I have to keep an eye on those.
I mean, I've kind of wanted to just write fiction forever. That if I could just probably do anything, it might be that. But at the same time, I love all the game work and everything else. I love wearing all these hats and doing all these different projects. I love it so much. But I finally got off my ass and released a book with, it's a lot of short stories that I had published elsewhere that were already vetted and edited. So it's like, I'm not just a jabroni popping out stories. To Walk on Worlds. If you like swords and sorcery, I really do think you'll dig it. Just check out even just look at the cover. You'll be like, that's nostalgic.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about again, Conan, the Hyborian Age role-playing game. We're looking forward to it. Again, it's coming out in the middle of October. All the links in the description below. Anyone listening, thank you for tuning in. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time.